It is, for many Cape Talk listeners, your favorite time of the week. Time to say good morning to the Naked Scientist, Dr. Chris Smith, joining us now by Zoom to answer all the questions that keep you up at night. Chris, good morning.
Morning, Naomi. I'm getting all festive. I've already made slow gin, slow vodka. I've got a surfeit of slows. You spot the trend here. And even I've tried slow whiskey this year. And all of those would taste delicious in your Christmas cake and anyone's Christmas cake recipe, I'm sure.
I was about to say, Chris, have you got any fruit stewing in those slow alcohol pots of yours that could be used for a Christmas cake?
Well, I might branch out into other fruits next year because people tell me that strawberries do brilliantly, both in whiskey but also in vodka. But slows are in abundance this year in the Northern Hemisphere, especially in the UK, because we think because the weather was so amazing this summer, we just had an incredibly hot but really, really dry summer. And the consequence of that is that all the plants think that this is their last chance to reproduce. So they just go nuts. And we've had fruit in abundance. Apples, didn't know what to do with them all. Sloes, didn't know what to do with them all. So a lot of this stuff has ended up in pickle jars. And in my case, a lot of whiskey and slow vodka and slow gin jars.
Wow, that's awesome. All right, Dr. Chris, let's get to some questions from our listeners now. And a reminder to our listeners, send in your questions now because our time with the Naked Scientist is limited. And if you want your question answered, you've got to get in quickly, 072 567 1567. The first question, Dr. Chris, comes from Lance, who wants to know if it's true that a person is about 1 centimetre taller in the morning when you first get up than when you go to bed.
Hi, Lance. It's certainly true that we do stretch at night. I don't know if it's as much as a centimetre, because if you think about it, if you were a very small person and you gained a centimetre versus a very tall person, that proportion of your height would be very, very different indeed. But we do stretch at night, and we also stretch when we go into space. The simple reason being that when we're standing up and walking around under the influence of Earth's gravity, when we're on the Earth's surface, the weight of your body, which is basically your mass being accelerated by gravity, is downwards through your body, and so you compress all the discs between the bones in your back, and they're made of a squidgy substance that gets a little bit smaller and a little bit shorter because they're like shock absorbers when you put force through them. So we do get a bit shorter during the day, and when we lay at night, because we're usually not standing up sleeping, we're lying flat, that force is now from top to back. And as a result, you do sort of spread out a bit more. So you will gain a little tiny bit of height temporarily at night and then squidge it all out again as soon as you get up and put weight on your legs the next morning, or if you go into space.
So if you're auditioning to be a model, then I'm guessing first thing in the morning is a better time.
And get photograph recumbent, not standing up. That's right.
Dr. Chris, Keith would like to know why some colours attract more heat or cold than others.
Oh, hi, Keith. Well, if you think about this, light is energy, and different colours of light have got more energy than other colours of light. That's the wavelength, and that's actually the photoelectric effect. That's what Einstein got his Nobel Prize for discovering in about 1905. He did the work while working as a patent clerk. The photoelectric effect is that different colours of light contain more or less energy, but light is basically energy. And when light hits a surface, some light is reflected, and when we see a colour from a surface, that means that the surface is reflecting light that is that colour. So it's a bit weird. You think I'm looking at, say, a blue wall or a green car. The car isn't green. The car looks green because it's absorbing all the other colours of light and reflecting the green colours back to you. So the more colours that are reflected, the less light is actually ending up in the surface, and therefore the less energy is ending up in the surface, and therefore the less heat the surface will end up with. The darker the surface, the less light is being reflected, therefore the more energy there is that's being absorbed, and therefore the higher the temperature will be. So guys out playing Australia at cricket are wearing whites. They're reflecting a lot of light because a mixture of all colours of light that we can see looks white to us. That means you're reflecting the maximum amount of light you can. You're therefore absorbing the minimum amount of light. So that minimises the amount of heat that's going into you. That's why we wear white in the hot sun. And if you have a solar panel, it looks black because you want as much energy as possible to soak into that surface to create electricity or heat water. Hence, you don't want to reflect too much light. Hence, you make it of a substance that looks black. So a blacker substance gets warmer in the sun. A whiter substance stays cooler in the sun.
And yet, so many South African school uniforms have these black or dark colored long sleeve heavy
jumpers.
blazers that
Yeah,
children
yeah.
have to wear in the sun.
But
It's
then
ridiculous.
look at my ridiculous country where we're still in the habit of making schoolboys go to school in shorts in the middle of winter. It's all about suffering to make you a better person. That's my view.
That's the view of the school, I'm sure. Chris, here's a question that really resonates with me as I enter my 50s. Why does our skin get thinner when you get older?
Unfortunately, everything doesn't improve with age. The answer is that skin has a lot of proteins in it, including connective tissues, collagen, and elastic tissues, fibrin. And as we get older, the cells that make collagen make less of it, and there are fewer of them. And the cells that lay down the elastic tissue, the elastins, also become less numerous. So skin therefore has less connective tissue, less collagen, less elastic tissue, less elastin. And if you've got less of this connective tissue, the skin is itself thinner. And elderly people will say their skin goes more papery as they get older. Happens to all of us. And it's partly because as we age, cells become less numerous because they can't divide as fast and we have fewer stem cells to replace them. And also, the cells become less efficient at doing the job they do because their DNA can become mutated or damaged, often because of sun exposure. And so a combination of aging, sun exposure, and also smoking. Cigarette smoking is terrible for skin aging, and it tends to thin skin more. So if you want to avoid all of those things, have darker skin, not that you've got a choice about that, but that does age much, much better because it's less susceptible to sun damage.
And you don't mean darker by suntanning darker?
No, don't. Have naturally darker skin. Black skin and white skin has the same number of melanocytes, the cells that make the dark pigment, but they're more active. And that melanin stops the ultraviolet radiation getting into the deep layers of skin where it can damage stem cells and also where it can degrade the elastic fibers. And do not smoke. Smoking has such a significant effect on aging. You can actually see this. And there was a paper that was published in the British Medical Journal. It's about 30 years ago, but they put pictures of faces into the journal and it said, can you spot smoker's face? And the page was comparing the faces of smokers and non-smokers, and it was very, very obvious who was a smoker and who wasn't by about age 50 to mid-50s because of the accelerated aging effect of smoking. So if you want to invest in staying young, the best thing to do is not buy packets of cigarettes.
Would vaping be included in that?
We don't know, do we? Because we've got 50 plus 60 years of really good data on the health impacts of smoking. That's why, thanks to Richard Doll and his colleagues at the University of Oxford, we know that smoking causes cancer. We know that smoking causes heart disease. We've got about 2 decades of data on vaping, which might not be long enough to disclose many of these effects. There are certainly fewer health harms, we think, from vaping. It certainly contains fewer what we know to be harmful chemicals than cigarettes, but that doesn't mean there's no harm, and it may well be there are other harms that will take time to disclose, and we need to do the experiment. And there are millions of people vaping around the planet and have substituted vaping for smoking, and so it's difficult to find out exactly what the health harms are because we haven't got a pure group exposed only to one or only to the other to compare at the moment. So people are being very cautious about drawing any conclusions, but they're certainly watching very carefully to see what the damage may be. But we don't know is the bottom line at this stage.
Chris, Anna wants to know why some people have a lisp and others don't. Is it a mouth or a language thing?
I think it's a movement thing in the sense that if you think about how we form words and sounds, you are putting your tongue in a certain position in your mouth relative to where your lips are and sending sound vibrations through that space at the same time. Because when we speak or sing or make any sound, we're actually using our vocal cords as a resonator. They're producing a buzzing noise because by pushing air out of your lungs and over the vocal cords open and close fast. And that creates vibrations or puffs of air, which then come up into your mouth cavity and they resonate in the same way as if you go into a cathedral or something and whistle, not that you would, or sing or clap, and you get an echo, you are resonating in that space, and the sound waves resonate in the shape of the cavity you make in your mouth. That shape is determined by where your tongue is, where your lips are, and also the natural shape of the facial skeleton, which is why everyone sounds different. So when you make certain word sounds, if you can't put all those 3 elements together, your tongue in the right place, lips in the right place, and the airflow in the right place, the sound doesn't sound quite right. And some people are going to struggle to make certain movements in certain coordinated fashions in certain languages. And so you might have a lisp in one language but sound absolutely fine in another language because the movements you have to make are easier to make for you in one language than another. Often that is because people have switched languages or had to learn another one, and therefore they can get some of the movements but not all the movements completely correct, which is why we always have some semblance of an accent, which is a giveaway of what our mother tongue is.
That's so interesting because there is actually a listener asking also about accents. So I might as well just quickly ask you this question before we go to the voice notes then. Jason says, why do we have different accents and what causes or allows us to have different accents?
Just pure mimicry. It's because we're social creatures. How do we learn? We learn off each other. How do we do that? As little kids, we listen to those around us, we watch those around us, and then we imitate them. Those around us speak in a certain way, so we copy that. Why do we copy them? To sound the same, to fit in and make sure we're clearly understood by other people and that we can understand other people. And back in history, the world was a much more fragmented place where, because we didn't have telephones, we didn't have aeroplanes, people tended to go to one place and stay stuck in one place, and therefore certain characteristics tended to entrench in those places. And also dominated by language, because languages also dictate how you tend to produce certain sounds. As we all know, there are different languages that sound very different, and as a result you get into a habit of speaking a certain way and making movements to make certain words, just as I was saying, a certain way. So that gives you a characteristic vocal accent which can be used to single out where you come from around the world. But this is blurring because people are moving so much, and also we're being exposed to so many different inputs from different corners of the world now. We watch American television shows, we watch things from Australia, we watch things from the UK, other European countries. And so as a result, we're getting deluged in a range of different sounds and speech patterns. And someone did a study on this a few years ago because they looked at people in Scotland who have a very characteristic accent, and they looked at how their verbal sounds were changing and found that there was a correlation between people watching soap operas featuring people from London and Cockney accents and the changes in some people's speech patterns in Scotland. So EastEnders, the soap opera, is affecting the lovely burr of a Scottish accent because people in Scotland are subconsciously imitating Cockney rhyming slang.
I've seen it in my own little world. My daughter's friends, 12-year-olds, all talk with an American twang. They all are, all the content they assume is on YouTube and TikTok, and they all talk with the same twang. It's bizarre to me. And another follow-up question on that, Chris, is that why are some accents so much easier to pick up than others then?
I think partly this is a reflection on the person. Because I've got friends, for instance, who live in South Africa. I've got friends who live in Australia, and they emigrated to both places from parts of the UK decades ago. And when you listen to them, you would think that they just got off the aeroplane from that part of the UK. There are other people who I know have been in both of those territories for much less long, and they already sound like the locals. Not completely, but they already sound very much like the locals. And there are others, friends of mine who I work with, who go to certain places and they massively ham up their accent when they go home. I know someone Irish who massively, and doesn't even realise they're doing it, exaggerates their Irish accent when they go home and visit the family. And when they're hanging around with us lot in southern England, they sound more like we do. So I think it's partly we tend to imitate each other in order to fit in, and some people are much more susceptible to this in the same way that some people are very much more empathic to other people. They tune into other people's feelings. It's how we build relationships with each other. And I think that some people do that very, very well, and it becomes reflected in how they speak as well, because we are aiming to get onto someone else's verbal wavelength in order to have a stronger bond with them.
Sure, it is so interesting. Let's take a listen to some questions that have come in on voice notes on the WhatsApp line. Chris?
Hello, Amy. This is Andre. Just an interesting thought on wearing thick clothing in summertime. If you look at the way that the Arabs dress in the desert, they wrap themselves up in thick clothing. It actually insulates you against the heat. So wearing a thick blazer in summertime is not such a bad idea after all.
Hi there, Chris. Graham here. Just a question. I have a Ridgeback dog who has a habit of eating underwear and socks, but not clean ones, only ones that have been used, that is pulled out of the laundry or found on the floor.
Oh, great.
Any idea what that might be from. Thanks. Bye.
I think I've got one of those as well. No, our dogs do the
That's
same
so
thing.
gross.
They like smells. Dogs' brains, over a third of their brain is devoted to smelling things. You can tell how high a priority of a sense is in an animal's life by looking at how much brain it devotes to that particular sense. In humans, a third of our brain is devoted just to what we see. So when I look at something, a third of my brain is engaged in working out what my eyes are looking at. And in a dog, it's the nose. So dogs automatically go for anything smelly. They love smells. What smells good to a dog? Well, it's stuff that doesn't smell good to us. If you bath your dog, you will find it will very quickly go and find the nastiest, crappiest thing to roll in, because muck and mud to a dog smells like Chanel No. 5 to us. Dogs love smelling of that, and they don't like smelling nice. What we call nice. So they're attracted to smells because they're interesting to them. So the smellier something is, the more interesting it is to a dog. So they'll automatically make a beeline for that kind of stuff. My dogs do exactly the same thing. And that is why they're going for those things. They're interesting. They also, if you think about what comes out of your feet, probably to us in a lesser extent than dogs, but dogs squirt pheromones out of their feet. And when you see your dog take a wee, and then it seems to be digging a hole behind itself, going scrape, 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 like it's wiping its feet, it's because when the dog urinates, it squirts some pheromones out between its paw pads, and it then scrapes its feet on the ground to flick the pheromones onto the ground, and that reinforces the marking of its territory. Now, I'm not saying that we mark our territory in the same way with our socks, but we do sweat very heavily into our socks. About a half a litre of sweat per day ends up in your shoes, because on a hot day, your feet are very, very sweaty. So we therefore impart a lot of smells through our feet, just like dogs do, into our socks. So that's going to make the socks attractive. Underwear, it's also in sweaty bits of your body. You've got apocrine sweat glands in your naughty bits. They produce smelly compounds that single us out to each other. And in the same way that dogs go around smelling each other's bums, well, we have smells in the same sort of areas for the same sorts of reasons. Dogs can smell that, and hence they also find them attractive or interesting to smell, and hence they'll go and pick them out.
That is so interesting and also so disgusting. And unfortunately, we have run out of time. Keith's got a question about lungs, but we're going to have to save it for you for next Friday, Dr. Chris. Thank you, as always, for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Sharing your knowledge, both pleasant and a little bit less pleasant with us on this
See
Friday
you next
morning.
time. Bye, Amy.
Enjoy your slow gin and send some over here to South Africa.